Hey everybody, welcome to Lavigne's Lunch and Learn. What we're going to do today is talk a little bit about Synthesia and have a little behind the scenes tour of the Synthesia Studio. And I'm going to be doing this as a mix of live and a bit of pre-recorded content. Prior to this, I asked a couple of people for some questions on what they would have me cover on this Lunch and Learn. And I got a couple of questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a question that came in via Trish Yule. So a wave to Trish. And we're going to cut away to the question now. The following question was submitted by Trish Yule.
How do you vet out a company you trust with your biometric data and intellectual property, your image, your likeness, when creating your digital avatar?
That's a great question, Trish. Now, as you can see here, I have a Sythesia webcam avatar of me not wearing my glasses. And as you can see here, I also have a Sythesia webcam avatar of me wearing my glasses. Which brings us to the question, why do I trust Sythesia with my biometric data and intellectual property, IP, used for the creation of my webcam avatars? Take it away, Robot Rob. Thank you, Trish, for your very insightful question about how to vet out a company regarding my biometric data and intellectual property. Now, we live in a world where a lot of our content has been put out there already. We've all kind of gone through the social era to a certain degree, some more than others. And in my particular case, there's so much Lavigne content out there in audio and video format that it'd probably be fairly easy to do quite a bit using sampling of that data. So I'm not too concerned, but at the same time, I am concerned. So it's a certain degree of caution, but a certain degree of understanding of the reality of the world we live in. So what have I given to Synthesia to do this avatar? Well, it was a 2-minute video of me running through a script, doing certain motions, pausing for effect, smiling, using my hands in some cases, and so forth. So it was a 2-minute video, and when you look at that compared to the probably thousands of hours of content out there that has my likeness, my image, and so forth, it's a small sample. Now, granted, it's a very specific sample that has allowed them to create this wonderful avatar that you see here. And in this particular case, I'm feeding my own voice as the audio track as opposed to using the AI to voice my avatar. Part and parcel, it's the acceptance of the world we live in. I covered that bit. In my particular case, it became a bit easier. I've used a lot of tools out there, a lot of avatar builders, both real, almost real, cartoonish in nature, and they range in pricing and they range in availability, and I've got unlimited access to a lot of these things out there that I never use, and there's a reason for that, is the avatars aren't necessarily kept up to date. You're looking at outfits in a lot of cases when you do an avatar. It's not just skin color, it's not male, female. Quite often it's the outfits that is the biggest thing that you go for in many cases. So if the outfits are dated, you tend to not want to use those avatars, or they're just not sharp. So the quality of the avatar obviously plays into it. But a lot of those companies also are companies that I really don't know much about. So in the case of Synthesia, I'm very networked into the organization because I've been doing stuff with them for coming up on 2 years now. So I've built a level of understanding of who's there. There are people behind the names, for lack of a better term. So it is a company that I trust, but at the same time, as we've seen recently with Twitter, one person can come around, buy the entire corporation, and that data becomes theirs, right? So we don't own this stuff. I don't know what's going to happen. I trust the people behind the scenes, but at the same time, this is an evolving world. So for me, a lot of it came down at the end of the day that I am able to generate an answer such as this in a single audio take, render it through my avatar, answer the question to you in a fairly fashion. Part of that is cost-benefit analysis, risk analysis, and all that. But also, in my particular case, I built a relationship with this company. I trust them, and I honestly want to push this technology forward. So part of that is being a guinea pig. There you go. That was Trish asking the IP question. And as you can see here, I'm actually dressed the same way that I was when I actually recorded my avatar. So you're going to get a sense of real Rob versus Robot Rob through this. I do tend to use my own audio quite a bit when I do my own avatars, but I have started been using quite a few AI voices that I've kind of picked up on that are kind of mine, but not mine, if you know what I mean. So what we're going to do now is go on to the next question, which came from Joe, and Joe really asked the question, how do you pick the avatars? So, we talked about, obviously, if you've got your own personal avatar, you would use it when it makes sense, because that's why you kind of got it created in the first place. But the average user will be using from the list of avatars that are out there. So what we're going to do now is answer Joe's question in real time here. So what you see here is a screen capture, and I've just got this on a loop, of some of the avatars that are currently available on the Synthesia platform. Now, this is specific to Synthesia. There are other tools out there that have similar functionality. But quite often what you're going to find is the avatars themselves are not just, male, female, different, racial backgrounds and demographic and psychographics and dress and whatnot. It's the outfits. To me, it always comes down to the outfits. And a lot of the cheaper sites, if you will, right now kind of created outfits or did captures a while back, never really retooled. And even on this one here, you can start seeing which outfits were original. There are the original avatars and there are the newer ones, and you've seen an evolution in the outfit. So I always start with the outfit, because that'll tell you first and foremost, are you doing a casual, are you doing a formal, are you doing something that's localized that requires headwear as an example, or whatever. At that point in time, you get into the next question of the AI voice that you're going to be using. If it's a male voice, you're likely going to use a male avatar. That kind of makes sense. If you are using a female avatar, you'll be looking for a female voice. And if you're starting to mess around with the dialects, you're starting to look at the demographics of the dialect that you're looking for, right? So if it's a Middle Eastern dialect, you're likely going to go with something that is, more or less Middle Eastern. If it's a European, or North American, or South American, or an African, or, the list goes on and on, you probably have certain ideas as to what the persona or the avatar would look like. If I'm doing something for myself, I kind of imagine various versions of me on the site, that are kind of interpretive, and I kind of stay within certain parameters of, this could be me. I tend to not gender swap or racial swap or anything like that when I pick my avatar. So those are all, personal decisions. There's nothing really formal about it. But when you look at these examples, I've said it before, it starts with the outfit. You can change the background on all these people. You can change the voices on all these people, but at the end of the day, you're stuck with the recorded version of the avatar and the available selection. So you just saw Santa Claus there. We're in the December time frame now, getting close to it. You're going to likely see more Santa stuff, so it might make sense to use Santa, right? If you're doing something, like I said, with a Spanish voice, let's say, there is, South American Spanish and European Spanish, right? And there may be differences there. If you're in a male-female scenario, obviously, that plays into it as well. You're going to kind of go down the list 50-50 on that one, right? So there's certain things, like I said, that at the end of the day kind of play into the selection process. You'll eventually find your favorites. I kind of go with the cast of characters, right? So if you're doing this for an organization, you have a cast of characters and you kind of rotate through that cast and you interplay that cast, and you might have preset diversity requirements in the cast and so forth. So those are all things that play into it. And at the end of the day, who is your audience, right? So are you portraying an individual, i.e. your audience? Are you talking to that audience, meaning it's a presenter, not necessarily representative of the audience, but definitely could play to the audience? But like I said, you look at some of these avatars and right off the bat, you're going, well, that might not fit what we're thinking, or that might be a better fit. And then what you basically do at that point in time is you kind of create a couple, you send the proofs, much like everything else, people select from the proofs, and then you elaborate. And typically you want to just focus on the avatar first before you start breaking into the voice, because that just opens up a can of worms of variations, right? So pick the avatar or pick the voice, either way, first, and then match the voice or the avatar as you see fit, as opposed to having a scenario where you have so many variations across multiple avatars, where not only the avatar is different but the voice is different, so you're not getting an apples to apples comparison. So fundamentally, that's it in a nutshell. That's how I would pick my avatars. Lately, I've obviously been using my own avatar. At that point in time, it really comes down to, am I using my voice or am I using an AI voice? As a Canadian, I typically go for a Canadian accent AI. There are three that I have access to, so I tend to leverage those ones. I also do tend to, when we're talking about AI voices, I do also do some post work on some of these things. So these are things outside of Synthesia. I may add compression. I may add a particular mic effect to give it a certain reverb or something like that, or a condenser mic. I may play with the pitch, right? So what you start with, is there. Similarly, the avatar, if you are going to do post work, there is the ability to change, the contrast and the brightness and so forth. And that's kind of what I've done with my avatar. There's the as rendered version of my avatar, which tends to be a bit more bright, less contrast, less saturation. So I tend to add a bit of saturation. I tend to then change the contrast and the brightness to be something that I want. So that's fundamentally the two questions that got posed ahead of time. What we're now going to do is kind of go into a behind the scenes of Synthesia Studio. And I'm actually going to fire up the studio right here. And what you see here is the latest episode of Synthcast. And this episode was regarding streaming. And I kind of chunked it up into, key things that you would need. And what we're going to do is, first and foremost, watch the actual rendered version of this, and then what I'm actually going to do is kind of walk through how I created it. So what we're going to do now is cut over to the example.
In this episode of Synthcast, we will examine the 7 essential items for live stream success. This episode of Synthcast is especially useful for individuals and organizations looking to pursue streaming. Synthcast is produced by the Digital Grapevine and leverages the Sythesia platform. At the end of this episode of Synthcast, please comment with your thoughts and questions. And now, 7 essential items for live stream success.
For those wanting to pursue streaming, whether as a fun hobby or a serious career, there are certain things that are needed before you can begin properly. Anyone can just film themselves or speak into a microphone, but certain tools will give a streamer a sense of professionalism and allow them to reach a potentially large audience. Here are some essential tools that a streamer can utilize to find success. A streaming computer essentially needs to perform the functions that you need it to perform. Since you need to stream a video, whether it be a game, a video, or anything else, you need a computer that is able to consistently project that footage live while staying connected to the internet. The biggest limiter for a computer is memory, since that determines how much your computer is able to store. While you don't need to spend the entirety of your funds on the most expensive computer you can find, you at least need one that has enough memory to fulfill your needs as a streamer. Keep in mind that for gaming, streaming can be done from the game system itself. A high-quality microphone is important for projecting clear and consistent sound to your viewers. However, what's even more important is choosing a mic that does not pick up background sounds that happen around you when you stream. Streaming in a quiet space obviously helps, but a poorly made mic will still pick up everything, no matter how minuscule. A Yeti microphone is a good choice because of its high sound quality and adjustability in terms of placement and what sounds it picks up. Headsets as opposed to headphones are another effective method of blocking out background noises. Monitoring audio at all times is also important. You don't want to find out after completing the recording that none of your content is usable. Just one camera is often not effective for streaming. Ideally, you would want at least 2, both at different angles to give you a larger scope of your vision and the vision of the audience watching you. One camera helps you to see, and the other is to broadcast with. The camera focused on you should be positioned in a way that lines up with your eyes. Typically, a standard laptop webcam will line up below or above your eye line, since you often look at the laptop screen rather than the camera itself. However, positioning the camera so your eyes line up with the screen gives the stream a much more personal feel. It gives audience the sense that you are directly engaging with them. When choosing a software, keep in mind that if you become familiar with one, you can more or less understand how most of them function. The differences between software for streaming are not that significant. For that reason, it is best to start with a software such as Open Broadcaster Software, OBS, since its freemium options offer more than enough for a streamer. If you are a beginner at streaming, there is no reason to needlessly spend money before you have started making money, especially when free options such as OBS are available. You can switch to a premium software later on if you wish, but when learning the basic tech of streaming software, it is best to start with a free option. A stable internet connection is definitely necessary to run a successful live stream, but stable internet connection can be quite precarious even at the best of times. There can always be issues with internet connection, and on some level you have to accept that things may not work out one day. You should never strive for absolute perfection, especially when dealing with something as inconsistent as the internet. Still, there are some things to keep in mind. Everything that involves internet connection runs through a single chain of bandwidth, so don't overwhelm that bandwidth. Restart your connection often, and use an Ethernet cable if you are not close to a router. Also, if you have access to multiple studios, they can be relied on as a backup plan if your connection fails. Having a streaming channel is an obvious step in streaming, but the channel should go beyond just the site that you are streaming from. In choosing the streaming channel, you want to pick a site that has a chat function, so you can communicate with your viewers. Engagement is an essential aspect of successful streams, and that interaction should remain regardless of how large or small your audience is. Streaming is one of the few forms of media entertainment that allows this kind of direct communication, so it is definitely worth taking advantage of. After finishing the stream, you should send the stream to other channels that allow for videos to show. These stream releases should be sent out on a consistent schedule, so your viewers will have content to expect and look forward to. A mixer may not be needed for all streamers, but can definitely be essential in specific circumstances. Mixers allow the two or more channels of sound to merge into one source, which can be very effective when it is necessary to filter multiple audio sources. For example, if you are having multiple guests for a group discussion, a mixer can allow all voices to be recorded with equal volume and clarity. This can be especially useful with the requirements of social distancing. A mixer can be a significant assistance in the right circumstances, and should always be considered, if not always used, by streamers.
Thank you for watching this episode of Synthcast covering 7 essential items for live stream success.
And there you go. That was the video that was more or less rendered directly from here. I did do a bit of audio boosting and, as I said earlier, played with the color a bit and stuff like that on the final output. But what you see here in front of you on the screen here is the Sythesia Studio, and I'm specifically in the project for these 7 essential items for live stream success. And you'll notice on the left, if you've never seen Synthesia, I'll break it down quickly. You've got your various scenes. So this is very much like PowerPoint and stuff like that, right? So you navigate through your scenes. There's a preview of your screen, your scene. There's the text that you want to have the AI read. If you're doing audio upload, there's a different process for that. Which AI voice you want to have is there, and you can obviously pick accordingly what you want. So that's available to you. And then the avatars are available here. There are templates that are available to you. I'll cover that in a completely different stream at some point. Your backgrounds, your text, your shapes, your images, background music, anything like that that you want to do. And then, as you can see here, I'm using the no glass version of Rob on this one, and then on the second scene, I actually switch over to the glass version of myself, and I basically just have the entire segment scene by scene. Based on the individual elements that make up the live stream success, right? So just going through the scenes here, the software was there, the internet was there, we've got the stream, we've got the mixer, and then at the end I ended with me going back to the no glass Rob with a call to action and a thank you fundamentally. So if we take a look at that one and work backwards here, because it's a little bit of text here, so we can actually do quite a bit. What I'll actually do here is modify this slide to show you kind of what's possible, right? So first and foremost, I'm a male avatar. So when I select from my audio AI voices, I will get male voices. So if I were to switch to a female avatar, the options of voices are available to me. Now you'll see all the different language options here, but because I actually have English text there, obviously, I want to have an English voice. If you were to copy Norwegian in there, you would want a Norwegian, and you would pick either from the default, the original, or the clear, right? But you don't necessarily have a Norwegian voice reading English. That's not necessarily how you would do it, right? So if I know that I've got English, what I can actually do is do a search on English. And at that point in time, I've got a US English, an Australian English, a Canadian English, a Great Britain English, an Indian India English. What else here? Mostly New Zealand, African, or South African, I should say. Ireland. I'm doing my flags really quick here. The Philippines, and the list goes on and on in here. But you would basically pick what you want. So if I actually look at what I've got right now, and this should actually play through, what you have here is the English Canadian Mature.
Thank you for watching this episode of Synthcast covering 7 essential items for live stream success.
Right, so if I wanted that to, let's say, I'm going to stay, let's say, Canadian, right? So in this particular case, I'll stay Canadian. So I'm going to do a search for, whoops, I messed up there. Well, there you go. So I picked English Australia just by overzealous clicking here. So this is what that same text would be like with an Aussie accent.
Thank you for watching this episode of Synthcast covering 7 essential items for live stream success.
Right, so obviously different, right? So if I were to just do that again, and let's say I wanted to still be Canadian, but not the mature one, I'll just go with the energetic version of it. So I'll click on that, give it a sample. Did I mess that up? I seem to be struggling here all of a sudden. All right, let's give this a try again.
Thank you for watching this episode of Synthcast covering 7 essential items for live stream success.
Yeah, so that was the Great Britain column one, and the computer's just a bit on the laggy side, so sometimes I'm not getting the one that I want and so forth. But if I wanted to change the avatar, what's fundamentally going to happen now is if I stay with a male avatar, in this particular case, it reset it to the English professional, but it would still be a male voice, right?
Thank you for watching this episode of Synthcast covering 7 essential items for live stream success.
So that's the professional U.S. English. But if I switch to the original gangster Anna here, now all of a sudden the voices that I get, the sampling options available to me, are in many cases the same verbiage, but it's now pulling obviously for the female avatars, right? So if I were to now go with let's say a Great Britain narration voice and give that a play.
Thank you for watching this episode of Synthcast, covering 7 essential items for live stream success.
Right. So that changes the entire presentation without me actually having to change the actors or the voiceover artists and so forth. I can actually, from the script, modify everything, right? So if I had to create a variation version of this that was not using my avatar, I have all the avatars that you saw earlier available to me. And then based on whether or not it's male or female, I'll have a male or female pull from the AI voices available to me, right? So all of that's available there, you know. So if I were to pull up Santa, there's Santa, but also you'll notice here there's multiple versions of Santa, and this applies to a few of the avatars depending on how they recorded them. And in my case, I did something similar. There's a closer cut without glasses and a wider angle shot where I actually have my glasses. But you can see here how just changing between those two, just changes that dramatically, right? It's not just, a floating head. It's got arms, right, for lack of a better term. But it's also a scenario where, once again, you ask yourself a question, what does Santa sound like, right? So we all have our predispositions as to what Santa sounds like. And I can make Santa be, French if I wanted to, if I gave it French text. And in this particular case, like I said, if I were to change that back to, let's say, an announcer voice from the US, a deep voice, this is what we get.
Thank you for watching this episode of Synthcast covering 7 essential items for live stream success.
Right? So same voice as Santa, but now all of a sudden if I flip it over to Mike, you'll have a completely different visual representation of that audio voice, right? So this goes back to what I was saying earlier. You kind of want to either pick the voice first and then finding the matching avatar, find an avatar that you want, and then find a voice that is good for it. But if you're going to be flipping between avatars, you probably want to, have a voice associated to that avatar. So in this particular example here, I've got Great Britain Calm for Santa, and when I flip over to Mike, it defaults over to US friendly, right? So what else do we got here? Well, we've got the text, right? So I was able to modify this text and put it wherever I want. I can drag the text anywhere I want. I can change the opacity of it. I can line it up. I can add its shadow. I can change the fonts, right? I'm just using the default Roboto there. But if I wanted to, let's say, make that rock and roll, there you go, right? And that changes all the spacing, so that's not necessarily good. So let's go and just pick another random one. There you go, right? We got font typeface, font size, spacing, and all the stuff. Then we get into the color, right? So if I wanted to have that a completely different color, I have that ability, and you'll notice that it's actually changing in real time there, right? So that's available to me. And then there's alignment, right? So if I wanted to center the text, left align, right align, all that type of stuff. So that's an element, and I can add more text, right? But you'll also notice that there's an animate option here. And if I click on the animate, there's all of these ways that we can have the text come in, right? So you can decide after the fact, like you would not want to do it this way. It cuts over Mike's face, right? But you might fade it from that side, right? So you can pick the animation and it incorporates it with it. So that's quite handy. Now, if we go back to Mike, we can do a few things with Mike, right? There's a full version body here, but I can also go to a circle version of Mike, move him around, change it. If I go back to full body, if Mike, let's say, is too big, I can change quite easily, the size of Mike. I can change where I want the avatar, right? So if I wanted to completely change things, I can move Mike over here and move the comments over here, and maybe I made Mike a bit too short, so let's bring him up, and boom, now we've got the new layout. And when I actually render this, Mike will be talking in a US friendly voice. So what else we got here? Well, we got the background, right? So in this particular case here, I just picked one of the available images, and there's quite a few right off the bat that you pick, and they're basically pulling from Unsplash. You can have video. So you can have video behind the avatar instead, right? So here's a little example. Might take a few seconds.
Thank you for this episode of Synthcast covering 7 essential items for live stream success.
Right, so that's a 21-second video, and I've got a 7-second strip, right? So I might turn around and say, you know what, I've got 7 seconds. There's 7 seconds. What would that like with that? Well, all of a sudden, the first thing I notice is, my text is a problem, right? Because I've changed the background. So if I now make the text white, let's say, right, and then go back, that obviously looks a bit better. And what would that look like?
Thank you for watching this episode of
The other thing that I noticed there is I still have this coming from the opposite side because I moved around. So I'm going to change the animation and just, zoom in instead. So I'm just going to have it zoom in. So what do we want?
Thank you for watching this episode of Synthcast covering 7 essential items for live stream success.
Video behind the scenes to further engage the audience. So you don't have to pay for these things, right? These are all part of Pexels, and any licenses has been taken care of behind the scenes if there are some. And same thing with images, right? So if I just wanted, like I said, a white studio, I could do that. I can have a different studio, but you'll notice, like I said, the color scenario changes, right? But I can, like I said, modify that after the fact quite easily by just going under Format, going back to the color, and let's say I want it red. And oops, did I not do that? There we go. So there we go. Now it's a pinkish color, right? So all of that's possible. Like, so you can modify the background. You can modify where the avatar is, how the avatar is placed, what kind of text you want on there. If you wanted to add images, these would be things that would be overlaid above. So it's the same images catalog that you have, but instead of making it a background image, it basically puts it on a layer, foreground layer that you can do. There are icons that you can use, a whole bunch of pre-selected, and you can search, and this is using Icons 8 for it. But you can also upload stuff, right? So in this particular case, let's say I wanted to have my Poptics widescreen. Now, because this is an alpha image, you'll notice right there that it's accepting the alpha layer, which is key. But I can basically just layer that up. I'm a bit off on my alignment here, but let me just do this quickly here. Boom, boom, boom. There you go. Now I've got, my Poptics over frame, right? And let's say I wanted Mike to be maybe a bit more in frame. What I can do is I can pick my avatar, and there we go. I'll probably have to bring that back first to be able to select Mike. Yeah, so if I wanted to take Mike and let's say, okay, now I'm going to bring Mike up because I've got the bottom portion there, right? So I can do that. And now if I go back to my image and I move that forward, or actually bring it right back to the front, there you go. You've now got that frame. So that was as easy as possible. And the nice thing now is, let's say I wanted to have Christian instead, I can just modify to Christian, and the list goes on and on. If I wanted to have Emma in there instead, and I just noticed that, I'm cropping their head off a bit on some cases. So I probably, there you go. That looks pretty cool. So we have, a complete different ending slide here compared to what we had before. And like I said, if I wanted to change the text, it's just a matter of copying and pasting the text. There's a couple of things here. If I were to right click, you'll notice that there's pronunciations, pauses, variables. Variables is kind of cool if you're doing API driven personalized content, basically, where you're just running multiple versions of this, pulling from a particular variable and incorporating it into the feed. I tend to not do that myself. Most of my stuff tends to be single purpose, so I don't have to have variations too much. And if the variation is needed, it's typically a large variation. So once again, that was fairly easy for me to modify. Like I said, the avatar, the text, the background, the foreground, in the case of adding the Poptics TV layer that you see there. And once I'm done, it's just a matter of hitting generate, and a matter of minutes, depending on how big it is, and you're set. That is it. The process can then be shared afterwards, and you're basically using the video on the Synthesia share, or you can download it and incorporate it into other things you do. So we are at the halfway mark of this session, and I'm actually going to basically use this opportunity to just double check to make sure that there are no last minute questions, and I do not see any questions. So we're in a good scenario now, so that what we're going to then do is stop the stream. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this.